Kelly house has been in the Kelly family for 31 generations. But after years of neglect, this once magnificent building is near derelict. The Kellys are holding on to their birthright by their fingernails.
If we can't make it work at the moment, the only option will be to sell.
The family has called in businesswoman Ruth Watson to help turn their fortunes around. It's her biggest challenge yet.
This is the worst case I have ever had to help with.
After more than 900 years of history, could this be the end of the line for the Kellys at Kelly House?
This building is literally falling down. Do you feel you've been a servant to the Kelly family?
Oh yes, definitely.
It's so rotten, I can see the sky.
Kelly House is a Grade 1 listed mansion in the far west of Devon. The estate and even the village itself are named after the Kelly family. Generations of Kellys have lived here for nearly 1,000 years, but the family has fallen on hard times, and this proud house, once the heart of the community, now stands neglected, isolated, and in a severe state of decay. 67-year-old Warren, the 31st Squire of Kelly, is at his wits' end.
The stumbling block to turning it round has been simply a lack of money. The advice we were given a long time ago from one of the English heritage people was, you need to win the lottery.
Warren and his wife Liz live next door in the converted stable block. Warren took over the estate in 2007 when his mother died. But over the years, as the heir and not the owner, Warren looked on as the house gradually deteriorated.
I think we probably survived by keeping our heads down.
The estate once owned swathes of Devon, Cornwall and Somerset, but generations of Warren's ancestors have been forced to sell most of the land to keep the house going.
All the farms that would have supported the estate have long been sold off, so we're left really with buildings and nothing very much to support them.
The Kellys' circumstances reached crisis point when they were hit by crippling death duties just after the Second World War, when two heirs died within a year of each other.
My father inherited 2 lots of inheritance tax and sort of struggled through the rest of his life trying to sort things out.
With the recent death of his mother, there's now a 3rd tax bill. Warren's daughter Sophie and boyfriend Chris have uprooted their lives in Yorkshire and have returned to help save Kelly. Far from leading a comfortable country lifestyle, the couple find themselves instead camping out in the main house.
It's not unusual to find half a ceiling on the floor sometimes.
As the newcomer, Chris realises that the Kellys need more than money if they're to survive.
We need focus and direction, I'll be honest.
It's gambling, really. We're gambling with our family home. Which way do we gamble, and is it actually going to pay off?
More than ever before, the future of the Kelly family at Kelly House hangs in the balance.
One can't go on just pouring money in if there's nothing coming out at the other end.
We're trying to make the best of what is here. There must be something we can do.
In a last-ditch attempt to preserve this important part of our heritage, self-made businesswoman Ruth Watson's been called in.
Feels quite difficult to have got to this stage. None of us want to be the last Kelly at Kelly.
Hello.
Hello, good morning, Ruth.
You're Warren.
I am,
How
yes,
do you
welcome to
do?
Kelly.
Is this as bad as it gets?
Possibly.
It's
Very similar
heartbreaking.
all around. Well, we live with it. Anyway, this is the Victorian entrance. I
Right.
really ought to take you round and show you how the house was designed to be
Oh,
seen.
I'd love to, because there's obviously a more fabulous view somewhere.
Warren's seen the sad decline of Kelly House and well remembers the time when this grande dame was loved and lived in.
And this really is the angle this part of the house was designed to be seen from.
Why have we sort of part painted?
Well, we're in the process of slowly painting it. We're doing it ourselves at the moment.
How long was this bit taken to do?
We started about 18 months ago, and eventually we shall work our way round. That's the intention.
Another millennium?
I hope not, but probably 2 or 3 years.
There's been a Kelly living on this site for over 900 years, and its remarkable history is something that Warren is very proud of.
From here, we went through into the main staircase area.
Staircase with your lovely Venetian window.
Yes, and the stars on the ceiling too.
It's beautiful.
Very decorative.
And the little putty in the corner. This horrible vertical crack going down the
Well,
corner.
it's been there for years.
Does it make you sad seeing how fine it should be and how not fine it looks?
I suppose I've lived with it so long and I just
You
feel
don't-
it's an old house. It's
You don't
not-
see it anymore?
No, we don't. I don't think we see it. I'm not all that worried in a way. I like a house which is sort of shows that it's been around for a long time and has history.
As long as
If
it
you-
doesn't fall down.
Warren's lived at Kelly for most of his life and has witnessed the generations of gradual decline.
Ah, this is the bullseye window that's beneath the pediment, isn't
That's
it?
right. So we're right in the centre
in
of
the
the
centre.
house here. Yes.
When Warren was young, this now derelict part of the servants' quarters was his playroom.
Well, I think largely through lack of money that the place has deteriorated, and of course, you know, there are less people around in the house, and that's what we need to tackle again.
Warren's daughter Sophie is desperate to see Kelly kept in the family. Returning to live in the main house has given her an insight into the true state of decay.
We've had a rather bad attack of dry rot because the prevailing wind comes, and this gets most of the weather. It's sort of the water seeped through and attacked the wood, and then you get the eventual dry rot, which unfortunately you don't notice until the worst of the damage is done.
Do you feel you're firefighting all the time,
Yeah.
rather, or dry rot fighting, maybe?
Very much so.
Yeah.
There's always the worry if you open a door, is the ceiling still up?
With such a long and illustrious history, Ruth wants to find out from the family why they're in such trouble today.
Now, I don't want to be rude, but you've had 900 years to get this right.
Well, only yes.
I mean, not you personally, but the Kellys have had 900 years. If we sort of just even go back 25, 30 years, do you think any progress has really been made on making this?
Patch and
Yes,
mend.
patching and mending. Not a huge amount of progress, no. We're a family in decline, but we're still here. If we can find a way out of that, then all well and good.
I mean, Elizabeth, you must be a fairly sanguine kind of person, and absolutely the reverse of me, because I would have been nagging like crazy for 30, how many years? 43?
I think it just falls on deaf ears.
Oh, right. Okay,
Apparently.
okay.
Well,
Well,
I
that
don't
is
think
like me
so.
then. An attempt has been made to paint the house. Is there any reason why we can't get a ladders or a bit of scaffolding and actually just finish that job?
You can see the level you can get to with ladders.
Ladders,
Right.
Above that, unfortunately,
dangerous.
it is rather dangerous. But scaffolding, again, there's a cost involved in getting scaffolding set up.
With no funds available and the house in such disrepair, Kelly House finds itself again in crisis.
Sophie, how have you thought about this?
We've looked at things like team building events and things like that, and then sort of work our way sort of weddings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What kind of bride do you think's going to want to be married here? Come on.
It's the outside. That's why we were doing the outside.
You'd have to be a Kelly bride, Sophie.
If the Kellys are to stand a chance of saving their ancestral home, they'll need to raise their game or face selling it.
I'm not sure whether Warren really realises the desperate straits he's in.
But will the Kellys be able to meet Ruth's exacting standards?
It's just partly finished. Or should I say partly started?
The Kelly family was given this land in Devon at the time of the Norman Conquest, and they've lived here ever since. But despite its long history, 31 generations later, the future of the Kelly family hangs in the balance. The present house was built in 1742 and formed the centrepiece of a farming estate with land in 3 counties. It's a fine example of a Georgian country manor, with a Venetian window, characteristic 18th century mouldings, and an impressive 19th century book collection. The Georgian house was attached to an earlier Tudor building that incorporated a medieval hall. But after years of neglect, many of the estate buildings have fallen down. At the heart of the village, Kelly House used to employ most of the community, but today it's seen as a forbidding place.
It's always been a bit of a mystery, really, Kelly House, as to what's behind the gate and what's inside the door.
It always seems to be the sort of place that you go past rather than want to go in.
All I knew was it was a fantastic building that looked like it was falling down around everybody's ears.
Desperate to maintain the family's heritage, Ruth Watson's been called in to help.
If we can't make it work at the moment, the only option will be to sell. If that happened, we would certainly move a long way away, and I don't think we'd ever come back. You know, just wouldn't want to.
Warren's the 31st Squire of Kelly. A semi-retired architect, when he's not carrying out essential house repairs, he's enjoying his various hobbies. He and wife Liz don't live in the main house, but in the stable block, which Warren converted into a flat soon after they were married.
Gosh, this is an extraordinary building. And the first thing I think is, how cold must this be in the winter? You've got no insulation. Well, I don't mean was, is.
Once the temperature, exterior temperature, goes below 45, it starts getting very cold and you start putting more wood on and trying to catch up with it, but it's hopeless.
When the couple first moved in, there was no glass in the windows. Warren planned to glaze them himself, but never got round to it.
The windows were a mistake. I rather stupidly thought, well, as a compromise, we could have these pieces of plate glass cut out and hinged in just to cover for the time being. That was in 1974. He still hasn't done the windows. The bottoms,
Yes.
they were all earth.
Right.
I said, I've got 2 children, I can't have that. And I hauled all the cement up and cemented these windows.
Yourself?
Yes. He let me do this.
Do you feel you've been a sort of servant to the Kelly family?
Oh, yes, definitely. General factotum. But anyway, that is a wife and a mother, and what else?
Right.
You know,
I think you're a very nice person. Liz, I don't normally do this.
Thank you.
Bit of a hero and a martyr.
Oh, dear. I don't like to be put forward to that, but yes, what needs to be done, you try and do it to the best of your ability.
OK, I'm sorry I'm feeling a bit tearful about this. I'm just going to leave. Not many women would put up with what Liz has been through. I only hope that her future involves not just windows that open, but somebody else to do the building work for her.
Daughter Sophie and boyfriend Chris have moved back to help save the house. They hope to start up small businesses, Chris selling bespoke picnic blankets, and Sophie making homemade chocolates. Currently camping in the main house, the couple want to move into a flat in the derelict Tudor wing, once they've renovated it.
This is hopefully the part we're going to live in. The ceiling is down at the moment because it was bowing quite dramatically, and we decided to take it down before it fell down.
What needs doing is the electrics. That's already on the way. A kitchen, we have a good quote from a reputable company that's come by way of recommendation. We're going to have to do a lot of work on it, and we're going to do the work. We're going to get it into a state where there's going to be a bed roughly where you're
Chris, I
standing.
have to say that you're the only person, and I'm sorry about this, Sophie, but who actually, I believe, might get on and do something here. There does seem to be a real Kelly thing going on about just It's not even just inaction. It's a kind of almost a denial of what's happening. Do you feel that?
I think my dad's very good at it, and it's sort of come through. My dad has a lot of hobbies. He's built himself a canoe. He's learnt how to do stained glass, and
he's built a classic car.
He's built a classic car, and
but he's let his house rot.
Yes,
I think it's
very
because
much
he can't possibly spend enough time on the house to be able to make a positive impact. Now we're here. Hopefully, it can change.
Yeah. Having met Sophie and Chris, Ruth sets off to explore the extent of decay for herself. Beneath the Tudor flat at the rear of the house, she discovers an Elizabethan kitchen with original panelling.
The fireplace over here would have been the place where they originally did the cooking for the house, but in it is a lot of residue from the jackdaws building their nests. And I have to say, they look to have been a lot more industrious than the Kelly family.
One of the latest additions to the house is a Victorian annex, which has another self-contained apartment that Warren started refurbishing.
This area could be let out, whether it's for a long-term tenancy or whether it's for holiday lets. This is a space that could be earning some money. And at the moment, it's just partly finished. Or should I say partly started.
With not one but two rentable flats on site, it's clear that there is potential to bring in a healthy revenue stream at Kelly. Back in the main house, Ruth discovers that every shower of rain threatens another fallen ceiling or outbreak of dry rot.
Oh, dear Lord. It's so rotten. I can see the sky through the first floor, up to the second floor, and all the way out. So what do? You put a curtain in front of it.
Ruth's worried that the Kellys are way out of their depth. She wants to know exactly how close to collapse the house is, and has asked local English heritage official Francis Kelly to visit.
Francis Kelly? Are you related to the family?
No connection at all.
No?
No.
That's extraordinary. What about
My goodness.
This?
My goodness.
You have an at-risk register, don't you?
We do.
And has Kelly reached that register?
Kelly's been on that register since it began. So here we are at Kelly House.
So the condition is poor and the priority is C, but it was bracketed A.
It means that it's slow decay with no solution agreed. Previously, it was rapid decay.
That's Kelly House itself, but I do notice that the stable block, which is where the Kellys live, is AA. So it's been at great risk and it continues to be at great risk.
Regrettably, yes, it's not in good condition. The real issue is that we've got a house in very serious state of decay and stable block in even worse state of decay. These are heritage assets of immense value to the nation. We've got to try and help the family to do something, or we've got to try and help the house. I mean, English heritage is really, our remit is to bat for the building, really, rather than the family.
Without urgent action, the future at Kelly House looks extremely bleak.
I'm not sure whether Warren really realises the desperate straits he's in, so I'm going off to a house called Woodchester where they have a number of very particular problems which they're dealing with in an innovative way. I think this could be somewhere that he really could learn from.
Woodchester Mansion in Gloucestershire is a country house with a difference. Ruth's here to meet Stephen Davies, its chairman.
Yes, hello, Ruth. Nice to meet you. Come
And
on inside.
you too. What an extraordinary building.
That's it, isn't it? Well, when the Trust was founded, it had a very far-sighted and visionary idea, which was to make the mansion available to students to train on. And it was the only building in the country where student masons could come out of their classroom and come down here and actually fix stone, learn to cut it and learn to fix it on a building.
And you've got plenty of stone for them to play with.
We're not going to finish.
I don't think they're going to run out, are they?
Construction of the mansion started in the mid-19th century, but was never completed. Today, apprentices get to practice their skills here on a real building, while the house benefits from their work. and it brings in tourists too.
How many visitors do you currently get a year?
We get between 5,000 and 6,000.
What kind of revenue are they producing?
They're bringing us over £30,000 a year.
Well, that's not to be sneezed at, is
We
it?
don't sneeze at it, although in this house we sneeze at quite a lot of things.
The severity of the Kellys' predicament is evident. Having done her research, Ruth heads back to Devon to present her findings to the family.
Hello.
Hi.
I have to tell you that this is probably the worst case I have ever had to help with. I don't know whether that gives you a sense of pride or a foreboding, but anyway, this is difficult. It's quite obvious that money is the problem. I think also that really has been a lack of focus as well about how to go about doing this. And I don't hold you totally to blame, Warren, for this. I think this has been going on for probably 100 years or so. It can't be left to just be talked about and to be sort of darned and patched.
It's what we've been doing, really, isn't it?
Well, it is, yes. I suppose over the years, yeah.
Ruth starts with the most critical problem. Kelly House is on the brink of collapse. Having seen the scheme at Woodchester, she wants Warren to focus on a major restoration programme to be undertaken by supervised apprentices.
I know of at least 2 or 3 organisations, all of which have courses and schemes whereby people who are wanting to train in all the crafts and arts that are particular to period houses have to come and work on live buildings. And the obvious thing is that Chris stays behind also to learn some of these skills, because you can be both labourer, because there will always be some labouring work required, but also you can learn how to do some of these skills because they will be there. And the marvellous thing about that is that, first of all, you get the work done, but it gets done to the kind of standard that Warren really likes and approves of. And that way, I think you actually could end up not having to go to bed at night worrying about which part of the house is going to fall in next.
Yes, that would be a relief.
Ruth is also keen for the isolated estate to renew its historic links with the village. She wants the family to organise an event before the year's out that will relaunch Kelly House and connect them with the locals once again.
I would suggest definitely opening the house for certain days of the week while the work's going on to see the work in progress. That, again, gets people involved in the project. I also think that you need to involve the village in a way that actually you're inviting them to come and help. You need to investigate what labourers out there, what craft skills are out there that might actually just be prepared to come and do a couple of hours every week.
But getting apprentices in and enlisting local volunteers is only the start. Saving Kelly House will need a regular income, and Ruth has thought of how this can be attained.
What I really think needs to happen first and foremost is to complete the work that's been started on the annex and the flat above the two-tier kitchen. Instead of just starting it, doing a bit here and a bit there, it's really got to be finished, because that's income. And you need income.
Sophie and Chris plan to move into one of the apartments on site, but Ruth thinks this is a luxury they can ill afford.
Coming to the flat, I don't want to disappoint you, but I really don't think that you two should take up occupation there. That is a source of revenue. And I think what you should be doing, even if it's just for the next 1, 2, 3 years, is actually camping in this house.
I've got to be speak on a personal level
Yes.
here. I'm not very happy about not being able to live in the flat. It might be a selfish thing, but at the moment, Sophie and I feel like we are camping. It's not just camping in our own home, we're camping in someone else's house.
I understand that emotionally, but this family desperately needs income. And Sophie, you're not going to want to hear this either, but I think in the short term you should go out to full-time employment, because I think that's where you can best serve the interests of the family.
Lastly, after generations of procrastination, Ruth wants to see the family pulled together.
I really would love to see, before my next visit, I would really love to see the outside of the house properly finished painting.
Ruth's visit has reignited Warren's enthusiasm for his ancestral home. And just weeks later, restoration work begins in earnest. The Prince's Foundation for the Built Environment specialises in teaching fledgling craftsmen historic building methods.
Because of the importance of the house and the importance of every piece of the fabric within it, we've got to conserve and save everything we can. Nice and gently, and just work it in. That's lovely.
The apprentices will work throughout the summer. It's the first step on Kelly's road to restoration. But will the family follow Ruth's advice and finish what they've started?
Paintwork's rubbish, the floor hasn't been done.
And will Ruth's compromise prove too much for Chris?
It all seems at the moment like someone else is going to be reaping the benefits, and I'm not particularly happy with that.
There's been a Kelly at Kelly House in Devon for nearly 1,000 years. But this historic lineage could soon end, as, after years of neglect, this fine country mansion is on the verge of collapse. With no money to pay for vital repairs, drastic action is required. Ruth Watson's been called in to help. Realising the gravity of the situation, she's given the family a wake-up call. Liz Kelly thinks it's just what they need.
We're just sort of dragging our feet. What should we do? What should we do? And I think it's given us a shot in the arm, if you like, or a kick up the butt. It's got us moving.
With little revenue coming in, Warren has seen the house deteriorate over the years. But Ruth's come up with a no-cost solution that will herald the start of restoration. A team of apprentices from the Prince's Foundation for the Built Environment has begun a regeneration programme at Kelly, and they've made a start repairing precious 18th century walls.
Well, we've gone in nicely. Yeah, we're about ready to get this stone back in there. We slide it in. Sounds good. Backfill it with as much of the earth and water as we can.
As well as learning their craft, the apprentices are also creating a living museum of historic building methods. Tutor Henry Rumbold is delighted that his pupils get the chance to hone their skills on such a significant building.
The greatest thing for me about the house is that for these 3 weeks, the house has come alive. We've had these 10 people working here, and it's become livable and enjoyable. And so it just shows by bringing craftspeople into the house and doing this work that it's regenerating the house.
Buoyed by the progress, Warren Kelly's called in a group of building surveillance students from Plymouth University to do some of the heavy work. They make a start clearing years of neglect in the Tudor kitchen.
I think it's quite nice for the Kellys because we get really excited about things like beetles. Yeah. And it's probably not very nice for them, but we really like seeing beetles and rot. And so hopefully it makes them feel a little bit better.
But if Kelly House is to survive, it urgently needs a regular income. With 2 flats on the estate, Ruth wants to see both refurbished and let. Boyfriend Chris and daughter Sophie were hoping to live in one of the properties. Chris is far from overjoyed at the prospect of having to give it up.
Well, it wasn't entirely happy days for me, because I did want to be moving in here. We're doing all the work on it at the moment and getting everything sorted out to be able to move in. We just spent thousands of Sophie's savings on the electricians, and another couple of thousand more on the kitchen, which is going to go in here eventually. And it all seems at the moment like someone else is going to be reaping the benefits, and I'm not particularly happy with that.
Without an urgent cash injection, Kelly House is doomed. Despite his disappointment, Chris realises that at least in the short term, compromise is necessary. Local holiday letting agent Adam Bolt has been called in to assess the Tudor flat. Located in the heart of Kelly's historic estate, Sophie and Chris hope this will get them a premium rent.
Madam from Farmer Cottage Holidays. This is going to be the kitchen area, straight dining room.
Expected. Yes.
Yeah.
Realistically, it's 2 bedrooms, sleeps 4 to 8, depending on whether they want sort of additional sleeping in the in other rooms. So really, it's 4. This room, I think, is getting close to completion.
I'll have a look round and we can have a chat afterwards, shall we?
That sounds good. Okay. Fantastic. Okay.
But Chris and Sophie are only part way through their refurbishment.
I mean, our clients now are looking for really a minimum of what they've got at home nowadays, if not looking to surpass that, really. And so, yes, where we are now, there's still a long way to go. Without obviously seeing an end product, but I would look potentially in the region of about £600 that we would advertise the property at. Now, obviously, charging that sort of money, our clients are going to be expecting a certain finish. You know, you haven't got a ceiling in the other room, so it's quite difficult to tell as yet, but we'd be there or thereabouts. But, you know, the selling points, obviously, the history and so on, are going to help to balance that out for you.
The valuation comes as a big disappointment.
I'm not happy with the price. I think he's wrong, I'll be honest. £600 a week is less than £100 a night for 4 people. This isn't a travel lodge, and it will never be a travel lodge. You know, we want to. This is a 4-star accommodation, 5-star accommodation.
That's what we're aiming for.
It's 3 months since Ruth's last visit. With only 4 weeks until the Kelly House relaunch, she's back in Devon to check on progress, and is surprised to discover that change is in the air.
Joy of joys, there are people working on the stonework. And that is really good news because they look like they know what they're doing.
Improvement is being made as work takes place all over the estate. And Chris has been busy learning new skills with the apprentices.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, you're getting the masterclass.
Well, we can see we've prepared the background, guys, here. We've got a fairly good key on this wall, unless you want to see it all running down.
Well, it's all running down my jumper already. Which way am I going to run this then? Take it on that side?
No, on that blade. That's
on that blade,
yep.
like so.
Yep.
And then in and upwards?
Yep, push it on hard and then just wipe it on. Let's go.
Oh,
that's beautiful. Now take it off and that's fine. That's okay.
I'm just trying to force it in there because it seems to be coming back out again.
Well, it's a technique that it isn't easy to understand and to use. It is quite tricky, isn't it?
It is. It's trickier than I expected.
But Kelly House needs to earn its keep. Ruth has suggested the family renovate and rent out 2 flats.
Hello.
Nice to see you again.
How are you?
Work has yet to start on the Victorian annex, but Chris and Sophie have been making some progress on the Tudor flat. They want to live in it, but Ruth's hoping they've changed their mind.
How do you feel about the notion of camping in the house rather than occupying this flat?
I'm not sold on it per se. I don't really want to be in there.
Yeah.
But as a means to an end, in terms of getting this place rented out, definitely.
Well, good for you, because you've moved your position and because you've been very honest about this. Initially, this was the dream to live here. I suggested the house, you were very anti that. So I have to give you full marks because, you know, it's nice that you realise that compromises have to be made in order to get where you want to be at the end.
The price that we were given by the estate agent was roughly £600
a week
for a weekly.
And that was with 2 bedrooms?
Yes.
We're still looking at £2,500 a month or so, which is income you currently don't have.
Ruth's pleased to hear about their change of heart, but like the letting agent, she's concerned that the flat is far from finished.
I don't want to pour water on your endeavours because I'm really impressed that you've come on so far. I think you're quite a way from a stage of letting this out, because I do think that anybody, whether it's a long-term rental or a holiday rental, do require finishing touches.
As well as working on the flat, Sophie has been busy looking for full-time employment.
Sophie, what about you and the job? I did suggest that perhaps you went out and got paid employment.
Yeah, I've found a few jobs that I would like to have, but I've applied for about 10 so far and nothing's come back, but a couple of them have still got their deadlines.
Ruth's becoming increasingly anxious. Not only are the flats unfinished, Sophie still hasn't got a job, and any thought of revenue coming in is a long way off. Ruth wants to find out what Warren's been up to.
Been looking at fabrics really for possible use in the annex, in the first floor room.
Right. You don't think that's a bit the cart before the horse. I mean, these kind of papers go for about £80 a roll retail.
Yes,
You're looking at probably 20, 30 rolls. I mean, it's not like doing the downstairs loo.
No.
Have you got enough money amongst the family members to get the flat done and the annex done?
We're going to struggle, I think, yes, is the answer.
Kelly House desperately needs an income, and Ruth's afraid that Warren's got his priorities wrong.
I really would like to see that flat done, because as long as that's done, then you've got some revenue coming in. And I think that is really, really important. That's what I'm looking to see from you, and from the whole family, I'm looking to see that flat done.
Okay, yeah, yes.
Perturbed by the lack of progress, Ruth departs, worried that the procrastination that has reigned here for generations is set to continue.
The Kellys still seem to be pottering around too much. There is no overall plan, no structure, no feeling that they're working as a cohesive unit to get this work done in a structured fashion. So really, as I leave, I actually feel a combination of frustration and disappointment.
Over the next month, Kelly House undergoes something of a sea change. The apprentices have restored crucial timber and masonry, while the student surveyors have brought a new lease of life to the once abandoned Elizabethan kitchen. Sophie and Chris continue renovating the Tudor flat, and Warren almost finishes painting the front of the house. Kelly House might be slowly emerging from its slumber, but Ruth wants to see the estate reconnect with the local community. The family has organised a relaunch to showcase the recent renovation programme and attract much-needed helpers. Invitations have been sent out, and with the lot riding on today, Ruth Watson's back to oversee proceedings.
Today is the day of the launch party at Kelly, and I don't know how it's going to go. I have no idea. I have no idea whether they've done anything at all, actually. It all looks the same. I can only hope.
The Kellys are launching their work-in-progress museum, but have left putting it together until today.
Oh, hello, I thought I'd find you in here. How are you?
We're fine,
yes,
thank you.
how are you doing? This is part of the...
Part of the museum, work-in-progress museum. So we're just assembling items for people to look at. And these ones just putting up are the joints.
Right.
Because we've had the students from the Prince's Foundation here doing a lot of work. So we've got quite a lot of examples to show people of all the horrible problems we've found. And
I don't want to be picky when I've only just arrived, but there isn't a lot here, and I know you have got enormous amounts. So
we've got more to bring into the room.
For today?
For today.
Why is it being taken to the last minute before things...
Well, the last minute is because the men have only just been finishing, so we've been taking photographs this morning.
What time are you expecting people to come, and what are you going to be giving them?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, we're sort of doing tea and cake in probably the dining room, and then have this on display, and we're going to project the website onto a projector.
In the next room.
To bring in revenue, the Kellys urgently need to let 2 dormant apartments on the estate. Chris and Sophie have been redecorating the Tudor flat, but Ruth discovers that it's still nowhere near finished.
Now, you see, this is where I have a big problem, because I was told on my last visit the flat was nearly ready and they only had to do a bit in the bathroom. I don't know what they think they've got to do, but it's an enormous amount. The finishes are so poor, the bath is stained, it needs re-enamelling, the paintwork's rubbish, the floor hasn't been done, the basin and the unit. The problem is it needs a lot more work, but above all, it needs more professionalism.
Ruth wants to know from Chris why it's all taking so long.
I have to say that I am concerned. I've just walked through this flat. This flat and the annex are meant to be the first things to be finished and completed in order to get revenue in order to have some money coming in to do things, There's so much that is still of such poor quality. I think that actually what's required is for you to go to a bath store of some description and actually tell them to come in and make a bathroom in there. You know, it might cost £1,000, but it would be done deal, finished.
You did hit the nail on the head. It's £1,000.
Yeah.
That's £1,000 we don't have. And in order to get even close to that, we need, Sophie and I need to actually be working, drawing an income, so that either we've got the income to put that £1,000 in as an investment, or however that works, or we can borrow against the ability to repay it.
Without a cash injection, the flats will remain unfinished. But Chris has come up with a timely solution to the problem.
We've both decided that the best way to move this forward is for us both to be drawing an income.
What's happening on that front? Have you been for interviews or have you been looking for jobs? What's been happening?
I have a job waiting for me.
And that starts fairly soon?
It starts as soon as I want it to, and in fact I started yesterday.
Right, good. How is Sophie progressing with her job search?
Believe it or not, she's been offered a job manufacturing chocolates.
Manufacturing chocolates. Is this for Sophie to go and work with a chocolate producer, chocolate supplier?
No, it's actually a company that produces dairy products locally. And she took them some of her chocolates.
Right.
And they basically said, we want you to work for us, manufacturing chocolates, but also selling their product alongside her own.
While I was certainly surprised that Chris announced that he was going to go back to work and Sophie too, it's a jolly good thing because really they're not achieving very much here and at least it will bring some money in.
With the grand relaunch of Kelly House due to begin, Warren and Sophie are way behind schedule. And a sudden storm threatens to turn weeks of planning into a washout. Kelly House, in its heyday, used to employ most of Kelly Village. But for generations, the mansion has been in decline, isolated from the community. Thanks to the help of Ruth Watson, this handsome house is undergoing a revival and is once again opening its doors to the public. It's the day of the Kelly launch party, and although it's wet and miserable, the family is still hoping to draw in the locals in a bid to sign up volunteers. But Warren Kelly and his daughter Sophie are running out of time. And Ruth wants to ensure that the new work-in-progress museum, due to be unveiled today, looks professional.
Guys, can I stop you? These look very good. Let's move this right down the middle of the room, this here. Right. So it's right in the centre so people can go around either side of it.
Okay.
You know, I think we need to spread our treasure.
The Kellys have no idea how many people will turn out, but Ruth's convinced they need to make better use of the space.
Nearly there. Hang on. Stop.
Label.
Okay, that's better.
We'll put these in.
The intentions are really good, right? I approve of that and applaud it. It's the presentation which is just not great. Oh, that leg's a bit dodgy, be careful.
Despite the dreary weather, the relaunch of Kelly House has attracted hordes of locals.
Enjoy the house, sir. Thank you. If you'd like to line your umbrellas up,
After years of seclusion, the doors of Kelly House are once again open to the public. The mansion has been gradually falling into disrepair for years, but not all the guests share Ruth's sense of urgency when it comes to restoration.
You know, behind there you can actually see up through the next floor and up to the ceiling and out.
You just sort of seal this off and go and live in the next
you
room.
Obviously have the same culture. Is this a Devonian thing?
Otherwise you'd have a nervous breakdown, wouldn't you?
So you just sort of resign to it?
Yes, you have to be, don't you?
Well, no, you don't.
Family and friends are hard at work promoting the house and signing up as many volunteers as they can.
We're going to do tours sort of by appointment, you know, for small groups.
I can't believe they've done it so quickly. Well, experts. I mean, they're all qualified stick masons.
There will be guided tours which we'll publicise for, you know, groups to come.
Warren's going to do a short speech in a little while, just outlining what it is that everyone's here for.
This is the visitor's book. Have you signed our visitor's book?
Despite the rain, nearly 200 people turn out. The relaunch has proved a huge success.
The purpose of today's launch, really, is to display the start of our work-in-progress museum. And this is really going to record the work that we're doing on the house over the next few years. There are sheets around if anyone would like to become a friend of Kelly House and receive our newsletter, which is quarterly, or indeed become a volunteer, and we have plenty of jobs for volunteers. Thank you all for coming.
The people of Kelly are delighted to see inside the house after all these years.
I think it's absolutely overwhelming. It's amazing how many people have turned up to support the family and the house and the projects that are undergoing, and it's just what the community needed. Support back for all the support that the Kellys have given the community. Brilliant.
For one man, it's a chance to visit the property his father worked on in the 1930s.
And we've always said it's a shame that an estate like this had to go down, like, you know, but, you know, so it's marvellous if it can be rectified and, you know, yeah.
5 months ago, Kelly House was in peril. Today, thanks to the hard work of the family, the first steps have been made towards a brighter future.
So a successful afternoon. Lots of people.
Yes.
Anybody signing up to be a volunteer, give money, help, do anything useful?
We've had about, I think, 15 people sign up to volunteer and a reasonable more signing up to be friends.
Yes.
So we might be up to about 75 or
That'd be good. How have you found this whole experience? Has it been good or bad?
Yeah, very good. Absolutely. It's given us an incentive to get on and do something. It's given us the energy as well.
I do think you have now got the opportunity to do this, and really it is going to be down to your energy and drive.
Yeah.
It is hard work, Warren, and you come from a long line of people who've idled their way around. And now, you know, it's got to change, because that's the only way this house and you within it will survive. You can do all of these things. It's just a question of whether you will do them.
This is Heath House, an imposing Gothic Victorian mansion set in a 480-acre estate in Staffordshire. John and Flavia are the latest in a long line of the Phillips family, who have lived on this site since the mid-16th century. But despite their best efforts, they can no longer cope with its demands and have put the estate up for sale.
There was no other alternative other than to put it on the market, which is what happened.
It's never been easy for the Phillipses because they've never had enough money to run it happily.
But not everyone in the family is in agreement.
If it goes and everything in the house goes with it, you will never ever have anything like that again.
Can businesswoman Ruth Watson help the Phillips keep this fine part of our national heritage in the family and find a role for Heath House in the modern world?
Nobody's recently married an heiress, which would help.
They don't think I can wipe my bottom.
You've got to stop sitting on the pot and actually start pissing.
Heath House is a Grade II listed mansion built in the Gothic style in the late 1830s. 11 years ago, John Phillips retired from the family business and was looking forward to a quiet life. But when his mother died in 2002, he and wife Flavia were forced to take on Heath House and all that it entails.
Heath House represents work in a big way. To keep it going, you don't stop. You just do not stop.
The elderly couple divide their time between the comfortable family home in Worcestershire and Heath House, 75 miles away.
We don't live here full-time because in the winter it is extremely expensive to have the heating on.
But with just one housekeeper and one gardener on site, most of the work tending the 480-acre estate, with its 22 lawns and countless rooms, falls to John and Flavia.
Really, by your 70s, you think, well, let the next generation take over.
The Phillips have two bachelor sons. 40-year-old Justin has no desire to take on the house, but Ben, 42, is keen to inherit. For very good reason, John is not convinced this is such a good idea.
Everything that the family has had has been spent in large measure on this house and keeping it going.
With this in mind, John and Flavia believe their only option is to sell up. It's a decision Ben thinks his parents will live to regret.
It is such an emotional wrench for my parents for all sorts of reasons that it's very difficult for people to just calm down and think clearly about this thing.
Pensions advisor Ben lives in London, where he lodges with his aunt Anthea. She knows the commitment that her sister Flavia has made to Heath House.
Flavia didn't want this house in the first place. That was her wedding vows to John. I will marry you as long as I don't have anything to do with this house.
It costs £70,000 a year to run the estate, and John and Flavia are fearful of allowing their eldest son to take on such a burden.
Benjamin is, how would we describe Benjamin?
Cerebral.
He's cerebral and not practical. He could have good organisational abilities.
What, Benjamin?
He could have.
Struggling to keep the ancestral home going, the Phillips had no alternative but to put the house up for sale for £3.5 million.
It's increasingly difficult to balance the books. There is no capital left.
But 2 years later, it remains unsold, and the family is in real trouble. After 14 generations, is this the end of the Phillips dynasty at Heath House?
We have run out of ideas. We are lumbered with, if you like, a glorified white elephant.
Businesswoman Ruth Watson has turned around the fortunes of numerous country houses with her straight-talking, no-nonsense approach.
We just have no idea what to do. So if Ruth can produce some really workable ideas, well, fine, let's hear them.
Today, Ruth is in Staffordshire to meet John and Flavia. Over the next few days, she'll try and come up with a plan to make the estate pay for itself.
Bell not working, come in and shout. Okay. Hello? Everything about this house is so imposing. This hallway, I mean, is totally magnificent. This was built to really show things off.
Oh, hello.
Hello, you must be
Very
Flavia.
nice to meet you.
Very good to meet you too. Hello. John.
Hello, Ruth.
Yes,
Nice to meet
hi.
you.
How do you do? How do you do? Well, you do live in a stonking great pile here, don't you?
Yes, it's quite big.
How many bedrooms?
Do you know, Ruth, I'm sorry, I don't know.
I think that says it all.
There are miles of corridors, but I honestly don't know.
Well, you're in a position now where you think you may have to sell the house. Was that forced by anything particularly?
Well, we're not getting any younger.
And John, do you feel sad about it?
I feel very, very sad. I'm the 14th generation to live on this part of North Staffordshire and the 5th generation to own this house. So it's a lineage that is not easily forgotten about.
Could we go on the grand tour?
Certainly, come this way.
Built between 1836 and 1840, Heath House was designed to impress on every level.
I'll open the doors now, Ruth. As you can see, they were made on a large scale and made extremely well.
They're very, very fine carpentry, aren't they?
They are, yes. 160 years ago.
Fantastic. I can't help but notice that this house has an abundance of furniture. Why so much?
I think by Victorian standards this could be nearly minimalist, but I agree with you, it is quite well furnished. Our sons are not married, so nothing has been handed on.
Ah, so it hasn't been sequestered by the next generation?
Not quite, not quite. Well, we live in hope.
And you don't think your two sons could carry on?
Not realistically, because there is not a salary here.
Before Ruth can draft a plan of action for Heath House, she needs to find out the true state of the family finances.
Could we just go through what efforts you've made to produce some revenue stream?
I do these weddings. We did none in 2008 because We thought the house was going to be sold. In the event we had the worst of all worlds, we had no revenue from weddings, and nor was the house sold. But in 2007, I think we did about 11 weddings. It's a bit faulty ours, but we do get there.
To make ends meet, the Phillips have also tried to get the 480-acre estate to earn its keep.
Could I just ask, how much do you get in from renting out the farmland?
About 40,000, but the farmland and the let properties. Do you mean?
The let properties
yes.
together?
Yes.
So about £40,000.
With annual running costs of £70,000 a year and no wedding income, there's a £30,000 shortfall.
Did you run your own business successfully? Was it profitable?
To be perfectly straightforward, we did run out of money at the end, which was bad news, very bad news, and that was
So you're kind of used to running out of money?
It has been known, yes. One's learnt the hard way that if you're losing money, you've got to do something about it.
It's very obvious that for decades the Phillips family have been running out of steam. This is why they keep coming back to the notion that this house must be sold. I think it would be a great shame because for John particularly, it does matter to him, his ancestry and the fact that the Phillips have lived here for 14 generations.
But Ruth is about to discover that all is not as it seems.
Oh dear.
And could it all be too late for Heath House?
Somebody has put in an offer.
So is he seriously considering it?
Heath House is the ancestral home of the Phillips family, who have lived on this site in North Staffordshire for 14 generations. But with overheads of £70,000 a year, it's become a burden for current owners John and Flavia Phillips, and they've put the estate up for sale. Their fortunes are very different from that of their ancestors, who, during the Industrial Revolution, built the Gothic mansion on the profits of ribbon manufacturing. John Burton Phillips and his wife, Joanna, demolished their fine Georgian house, and in 1836, work started on the splendid mansion that stands here today. The local stone was cut so precisely that no cement was used in its construction. The family set off on a grand tour of Europe for the 4 years it took to build the house, returning laden with fine art and furniture for their new home. The impressive staircase dominates the grand hall, but the crowning glory of the house, which Joanna Phillips insisted on, is the 80-foot tower. Today, John and Flavia Phillips rather wish that their ancestors hadn't decided to build such an unmanageable edifice. They've called in businesswoman Ruth Watson to help turn the fortunes of Heath House around. Ruth wants to find out more about the estate's history from Flavia. Family archives reveal evidence of the previous, more modest residence.
Those are pictures of the old house.
Right. And this is so pretty, isn't it?
Much smaller, much more practical by today's standards.
So do you think if that had not been pulled down and you'd inherited that with John, that you might still want to be here?
I think I could have enjoyed it.
And these are all Heath House in its heyday.
Yes, John's grandfather on his horse, looking pretty sort of statuesque.
You can see that nobody did anything other than enjoy themselves.
They sat about, and I think it was John's grandmother who did a lot of the photography.
Recent generations of Phillips have struggled to finance Heath House, and Flavia is reluctant to pass on this burden.
You know, with the sons, your sons, is it you really just don't think they've got the mettle to do it or the business sense to do it?
Well, one doesn't want to see them fall flat on their faces. Nobody's recently married an heiress, which would help, of course.
Yes.
I mean, if they were very gifted, or if they made a lot of money in the city or something like that, but they haven't done that so far in life. So you do have reservations.
John and Flavia's eldest son, Ben, has come up from London especially to see Ruth. They meet at the derelict stable block, a site that's ripe for development.
Looking at the house from this angle, it's incredibly forbidding. I mean, one could almost say it's grim.
Yes, it's got a kind of ghost-like quality from this angle.
But did you ever feel in the back of your mind one day, this will all be mine?
I do remember as a 5-year-old looking up and going, wow.
Your vision for the stable block, what do you think?
I desperately want to see this place developed.
Yeah.
Would one side of that make a great recording studio, for instance? I think it could be fabulous.
As the eldest son, Ben is eager to inherit the house, but his parents aren't so keen.
Why do you think that they don't want to just say, here you are, Ben, it's yours?
That is the million-dollar question, and I haven't been able to get through to them on that one.
So if a sale went ahead without you feeling that you'd tried your best to do something, it would make...
I would feel cheated. I'd feel gutted, actually. What there's never been, Ruth, has been a long-term strategic plan. And we've gone...
Well, I'm very pleased to hear those words emanating from your mouth, because that's entirely what this property needs and what this property doesn't appear to have had for about 100 years.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's...
With no long-term plan, there's little hope that Ben will become the 6th generation to reside at Heath House in its present form. Could this be the end of the line for the Phillips family?
Right. Well, this is it, the big family map, which goes all the way back up
I love the way it says the Phillips pedigree, like you're all dogs.
And I'm down the bottom here, and so's my brother. That's all blank from here on in.
Yeah. So if this was the end, Benjamin and Justin, how would that make you feel?
I think it would be sad. It would be sad, yes. But it is remarkable that there always seems to have been a male heir to take it on down.
So there's another burden, progeny as well. It's all down to you, Ben.
Yeah. Big shoulders, yes.
To provide an overview of the situation, John takes Ruth up the tower. Like his ancestors, he's extremely proud of it.
Right, come along, Ruth. This is the way.
Am I nearly there?
A bit more yet. But you can think that you're getting nearer to heaven with each step.
That's definitely some solace. Gosh, that's a way up. When you come up here and you survey your property, I mean, doesn't that kind of give you the spur to carry on with this rather than sell it?
I think I have inherited, like my ancestors, an air of liking to show off. And certainly, bringing up one's guests up here, and I say I earn all that you can see, bow down and worship me, and they do, and they think it's wonderful. But I think they go down the tower saying to themselves, thank God it's not my responsibility.
Yes. And that's the truth of all these houses, and that's the whole point, is that unfortunately it's always in the hands of one family to maintain something that's actually for the national good. Anyway, this area is very exalted for the likes of me, so I'm going to go down.
False humility, Ruth.
Back on firm ground, Ruth takes the opportunity to explore the rest of the estate. The formal parterre and original Georgian orangery are in good repair and could provide a perfect backdrop for weddings. But the abandoned servants' quarters at the rear of the house have been neglected for decades.
I'm in just one room of what feels like hundreds in the derelict servants' wing. We're down to bare brick on the walls. Windows are out. I mean, this is really dangerous stuff because, you know, this is where the rot starts. And the Phillips, you know, might be living in splendour in the drawing room, but up here, it's another story.
In a bid to find solutions to the Phillips' financial problems, Ruth is on her way to Hardwick Hall, 45 miles away. It was built for Elizabeth Hardwick, once one of the wealthiest women in England. Today, it's owned by the National Trust. Assistant Property Manager Richard Heath shows Ruth around.
This is famous for Bess of Hardwick, isn't it?
That's right. Bess, Elizabeth, Countess of Shrewsbury, built it in the late 1500s.
And just as a sheer display of her wealth and prominence.
Oh, absolutely. She has her initials all on the turrets, so she really made sure that everyone knew she had the money, yes.
But today, Ruth is more interested in a more modest residence.
Now you've got this stable block, and what prompted the National Trust to refurbish it and turn it into holiday lets?
The stable block needed renovation, and it was decided at the time that holiday cottages would be a good avenue to go down.
Oh, this is really attractive, isn't it?
This is high hazels, yes.
Very nicely done. How many rooms in here?
Sleeps 12, actually.
Oh my gosh.
Like Heath House, Hardwick Hall is in prime tourist territory. Close to the Potteries, Peak District and birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, this part of the country attracts millions of visitors every year. It's a market the Phillips could be tapping into.
Here we are in one of the double rooms on the first floor of the house.
This is obviously quite a large unit. What would you say was the optimum size for a number of people?
Around about 6 to 8, I think, is
Yeah.
probably optimum.
And in high season, what kind of rental could you expect?
For a sleep 6, high season, around about £1,400.
Fantastic. And of course, one of the other marvellous things is that you can actually see the big house. I mean, how much do you think that adds to the reason why people come?
I think that's a great attraction.
Having done her research, Ruth has come up with a portfolio of ideas that could generate a healthy income for Heath House.
Hello?
But with the property still on the market, Ruth must persuade the Phillips that keeping the estate in the family is a viable option.
The first thing I would say to you, which I think you should take comfort in, is that because the house hasn't sold and you've had it on the market for 2 years or thereabouts, that actually gives you a great window of opportunity.
Are you therefore saying that the house should be taken off the market?
I am saying that it's entirely down to you. I know you have doubts about Ben inheriting, but you also feel very strongly that, you know, you are part of the Phillips line, your sons are as well, and that this house matters to you. But actually, you're the stumbling block.
The estate costs £70,000 a year to run, but Ruth is convinced that the Phillips can achieve this by getting Heath House back in business.
My solution to the problems are, first and foremost, that you take in hand the weddings in a way that you haven't done at the moment and really try and get some proper profit out of them. I think it could provide jolly good cash flow. I think this is something Ben could easily do while he still holds down his position in the city. That could produce an income of 50, 60, 70, 80,000 a year if it's done properly.
After her visit to Hardwick Hall, Ruth has also come up with a financial solution that could secure the future of Heath House for generations to come.
When it comes to a longer-term, bigger project, I think that the stable buildings would make fantastic holiday lets. I think you could be looking at 100,000 a year cash flow there as well.
Do you think the holiday lets would do in this area? Would do well?
There are enough people around about you that are doing it with large houses and have got successful holiday lets for me to think so, yes.
I mean, this has been gone into in some considerable depth already. And my estate agents, if you like, have poured buckets of cold water on the whole concept, saying because it's going to cost them a hell of a lot and you're not going to derive sufficient income to cover it, to cover the expenditure. Can I just finish, please? The cost of turning those stables into, let's for argument's sake, say office accommodation for the moment, it has generally been said that it would not cover the costs, that it would be...
But I'm not suggesting office accommodation.
No, I know you're not.
It's a stupid idea, because where are you going to get people to come and, you know, carry out business here? I mean, that's madness.
OK, fine. The other idea that has been floated was to have tree houses up in the back of the woods, which couldn't be done.
But this is all kind of nebulous, silly little bits and pieces.
Yes.
I think if the bank were to see a proper plan for this house, I think you would get some fundings from the bank, enough to do the stables.
And with a captive audience on site, Ruth thinks the Phillips could make more of their historic links with the Industrial Revolution.
It did occur to me that if you can join with other houses, Wedgwood and all the various places around, which are only there because of the industry that created them, I could see a tour of what made Britain great. I mean, Americans would love it because they got history lessons. I think the amalgam of all those things could provide a very, very decent cash flow.
But before considering any of Ruth's solutions, the Phillips need to resolve a crucial dilemma. Make a go of Heath House or sell up?
Normally, I ask people to do a certain amount of work before my next visit. In your case, I think the biggest thing has got to be a decision. And I think you have actually, perhaps with Justin as well, you actually have just got to sit round a table, lock yourselves in and work out what you're going to do.
Yes, quite fine. Yes, I mean, there's no argument.
I'm sorry it's not music to your ears, John.
Well,
but, you know,
well, I've battled all my life. And after a while, you get...
You lose steam.
Well, you just, for God's sake, let's have a bit of peace.
If I give you no other piece of advice, it's that you've got to stop sitting on the pot and actually start pissing.
What a graphic description. Fine. It was good. It is like having a good internal flush out, and you feel better for it.
I think it could be tremendously exciting and very liberating, and might be the making of me.
It is an opportunity to let Benjamin start to fly.
I could be the hero that Heath House needs.
Providing that we don't get a really good offer.
4 weeks later, Ben calls Ruth with a worrying development.
Hello, Ruth.
Hi, how are you?
I had a phone call from my dad Tuesday night. Somebody has put in an offer
Right.
on the property for 2.
2 million?
Yes, which is 40% below the asking price.
So is he seriously considering it?
He's got Mum yelling in his ear, it's an offer, it's an offer.
Ruth wants Ben to tackle this head-on and suggests he calls a family meeting.
I mean, the major thing is, Ben, if I say nothing else, is don't let John bully you.
No, you know, I'm going into this full guns blazing tomorrow.
I really think you should be trying to resist it. Good luck, Ben. Good luck.
All right.
The next day, Ben and his brother Justin head to their parents' home in Worcestershire to decide whether to give Ruth's plan a go or sell Heath House at a vastly reduced price.
I mean, Dad, this particular offer that's on the table at the moment, where are we with it?
I don't think as yet we know enough to know whether to give any positive answer. I don't say I'm procrastinating, but that is nonetheless a fact.
To be honest, I think that this whole business of keeping on the market just distracts us from what we're trying to do, which is to create a business. One feels we owe more to the place than just selling it for a song.
We've got to cross the threshold and do these events, because we get, frankly, derisory offers in from time to time, and they are not, when they're scrutinised, they're not worth the paper they're written on.
Then you've got to do Plan B.
Yeah.
But then if you're going into Plan B, then you've got to stick at it.
Yeah. And I suspect we'd achieve more in 2 years by doing this than we would by twiddling our thumbs away from it.
This whole thing is going to take a long time.
The days of talking, we've had 7 years of it, and it's got to stop.
With an offer still on the table, the family remains divided. Justin and Ben are keen to keep Heath House and make it commercial, but aware of the family's past financial struggles, John and Flavia feel it more prudent to sell.
I suspect a little bit of Lady Macbeth dripping poison into Dad's ear and saying, you know, it's all going to go belly up.
One has to act in concert with one's wife, as I'm sure you know.
I don't truthfully think that selling it would make him happy. Deep down.
With the future of Heath House hanging in the balance, it's up to Ben to prove his worth. But is he fully equipped for the challenges that lie ahead?
His table's laid.
Whoa, no.
Who's opening the champagne?
Whoa.
Have you ever held a party before?
This is the sort of thing that happens, I suppose.
Heath House in North Staffordshire has been owned by the Phillips family for 5 generations. But this historic lineage could soon be over. Current owners John and Flavia Phillips have been considering an offer on the estate, but after weeks of protracted negotiations, it falls through. It's been almost 3 months since Ruth Watson's last visit. She's convinced the family don't need to sell the estate and can make it commercial. Ruth thinks it's time to give son and heir Ben the opportunity to prove himself.
Hello, Flavia. How are you?
Very
Good
nice
to see you. Good to see you. The joy, John, is the Phillips are here to greet me, not some unknown purchaser.
With a reprieve on the house, Ruth wants the Phillips to consider short-term solutions to their financial problems and has called in entrepreneurs Mark Chichester-Clark and Charlie Hurt.
Very attractive.
They run Stately Home Vacations, a brand new concept aimed at the high-end tourist market.
It's lovely. It's absolutely great. Yeah. What I thought we'd do, actually, probably later on this evening, is if the weather holds, then we'll have drinks out here on the terrace, if that's all right. Is that okay?
Stately Home Vacations have persuaded some of England's finest country houses to open their doors to paying guests, each property hand-picked by Mark and Charlie.
And obviously the big attraction is the view.
Lovely views.
During the summer as well.
Just the sort of thing we're after, actually, isn't it? Just.
And your bathroom is en suite through there.
It's a lucrative business. Parties of 10 will pay up to £1,500 for bed, breakfast and dinner with the gentry. Tonight, Ben is to host an overnight stay and a dinner party for 12.
You're going to be comfortable. I will be very
comfortable. You'll be all right, yeah. Okay, great.
It's up to him to prove that he and Heath House are worthy of a place on the Stately Home Vacations books. Ruth is keen for Ben to prove that he can run Heath House successfully, but she suspects that John still has concerns.
He's impractical, and you do need practicality with Heath House. On the other hand, he's much more cerebral than I am. And countless people have said that I've sort of bullied Benjamin.
You would prefer it if he did stand up to you and
Yes, of course. My mother always used to say that I sort of bullied Benjamin or something. I haven't consciously done so. Well, it's been the last thing I wanted to do. My only concern is for Benjamin himself. But he has always sort of felt that Heath House would be where he could really blossom.
You seem to now be willing to have Ben give this a go.
I don't think he could live with himself if he didn't give it a go. I think that is what it amounts to.
I think it's really good that you have come round to this. It allows both of you to move on, because Benjamin can never hold it against you that you didn't give him a go.
Yes, absolutely. Ruth, you're a brick. I like you a lot.
With the go-ahead from John, all eyes are on Ben. And with tonight's guests due to arrive in a few hours' time, the pressure is on. On hand to help out is Stately Home Vacations' Dawn Rudd.
Oh, wonderful. That's great.
It's coming on, isn't it?
Okay. Well, I'm going to light the fire now.
Okay.
So.
Hi, Ben. How's it all going?
Hi. Hello, Mark. Yeah, no, we're doing well.
Looks good.
We must think about the plasmor, where we're all going to sit.
Yeah. Just hope we don't burn down the house before dinner.
Yeah.
The chef is busy in the kitchen as Ben makes the last-minute touches in the dining room.
I'll teach you a little trick of napkin fold.
Okay,
Oh, no, not napkin folds.
I will go and...
Do you want to go and wash your hands?
I will go and wash my hands.
I shall start.
Most of the guests have arrived and it's time for drinks on the terrace. But nothing seems to be happening. Ruth is worried.
I'm slightly concerned because all the guests should have arrived, and I don't think they all have.
Yeah.
All the other things, tables laid.
Yeah.
And wine, who's opening the champagne?
Right.
Have you ever held a party before?
Forgive me, because I thought Dawn was coordinating it, and there's been a lack of communication as to who's doing what.
Right. Do you think you ought to be asking Dawn who is doing what?
Yes,
Yeah?
absolutely. We need to fill those gaps.
OK, all right. You go talk with Dawn.
I think the first things we need to do, first of all, get a drink up
Yes,
and running, and obviously find out where the guests are.
Give them another 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean...
You sort out drinks and...
Right, the champagne is in the fridge?
Champagne's in the fridge.
Right.
There's orange juice on the side. OK. Well, we can put the sort of a few things in motion and hopefully they might turn up.
Right.
Okay.
Should we go up through here?
Absolutely.
Ben eventually gets the champagne flowing.
I am. Let me top that glass, because the tide seems to have gone out.
But two guests are still missing, and dinner is due to be served in half an hour.
So are we still missing people?
We're still missing two guests. We've got the champagne lined up and the flutes and everything else.
Right, yeah. I think you need to talk to the cook.
Right.
Find out how they're doing, because there needs to be a point where you actually say these people aren't going to arrive.
Right, OK.
A decision has to be made.
To Mark
Ben,
now.
this is a small decision, but it's one you need to make.
Right, OK.
Eventually, the missing guests arrive.
Hello, hi.
Just in time for dinner.
Timothy and Caroline, is it?
Yes.
Hello, hi,
Yeah,
Ben
hello.
Phillips. Very nice to meet you.
Hello.
Hello,
You
you too. Hello. This is Dawn. Hello, yeah, do come on in. I hope you all heard that. Yes. Dinner is now served.
As the guests savour the atmosphere, they get a chance to find out more about the family.
And as everybody says, if you're a single man living with your aunt...
It's a jolly good thing to do.
And its ancestry.
So my my grandfather him, and my great-great is him. Not a very nice person, I'm told.
Age 42, he boards with my sister, has done for the last 20 years.
How sensible.
So what was the surname? Okay.
So I think that was the connection. I don't know.
The whole thing feels lived in, and it isn't just a sort of big house. It's a real home. And
I quite agree. And lovely gardens.
And the caption is, "This is why Mummy won't let me be king."
horrible.
Obviously, this has been an experiment, and it's shown up the fact that Ben is a little unskilled at hostly duties, but he is very sweet. And I think it really shows that Heath House is so well suited to this kind of event. People sitting around the table in the dining room, eating and drinking, and being interested in the history of the house, interested in the history of the Phillips family. I think, judiciously planned, this could work.
Ben has risen to the challenge. But what do the guests think about their stately evening?
The hosts were utterly charming, having never met them before, and that, after all, is what makes an evening.
It's got the most lovely family atmosphere. It's all slightly sort of old-fashioned, and it's wonderful.
It's a place lots of people are going to want to come to.
The next morning and the guests tuck into breakfast. If the Phillips hosted just 2 of these events a month, they could increase their annual turnover by £36,000. But has Ben done enough to impress the experts, Mark and Charlie?
I think Heath House is fantastic. I'm really impressed.
I thought the family were fantastic hosts. They made an effort to get to know everybody, and that's incredibly important.
I think Americans would love it. We would certainly want to use it.
Heath House and Ben have made the grade, and it's prompted John to make a significant decision that could see Ben permanently take on the estate.
The house is coming off the market, so Benjamin does have a clear run. One must be positive that things do work out. And who knows what, even Miss Wright might turn up. Benjamin can't really get out of now being in the hot seat.
With the estate firmly off the market, Ben is determined to prove to his parents that he's up for the challenge. He aims to employ a company to run events, but today he's hosting his first wedding reception, the first at Heath House for 18 months. The pressure's on. Ruth estimates that weddings alone could rake in around £80,000 a year, enough to run the whole estate. To help out, Ben's drafted in Aunt Anthea, his London landlady.
Whoa. Whoa.
Hang on to the wall.
Yeah, thanks.
Ben must ensure that the day runs like clockwork, but already there are problems with the lighting system.
I don't know why this one doesn't work now.
No.
You said it... Did it work previously?
Yeah, when I first came out of the front door, it was on when I plugged it in. Now it's died.
All right.
You might have to reference your father.
It's not something to be undertaken too lightly, is it? Having your own marquee.
You need a screwdriver?
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's good to thrust him into the deep end, and only by mistakes will he learn. I don't mean that too pompously, but that's fact, isn't it?
Right, I will go and I'll go and get a new bulb. This is the sort of thing that happens, I suppose.
With the lighting sorted, the stage is set, and Ben is front of house.
Hello, I'm Ben. Hello, how do you do?
Mate.
Hello, I'm the next generation down, so...
I think I've met you before a bit, though.
Oh, I think we may have done, actually, yes.
In the garden.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, how... Your wife looks fantastic. Very nice to meet you. I'm Benjamin.
You're in charge
the
of the
family, yeah. So it's lovely to have everybody here today, yeah.
Bride and groom Hayley and Matt live locally and were thrilled to discover that Heath House was back on the market as a wedding venue.
Over the moon with the venue. I say, when Matt proposed to me, I wanted it up here, but they weren't doing weddings at the time, so it was an off chance that I asked if they were doing them, and it just so happened he was starting doing weddings again. So we jumped at the chance, didn't we? And
yeah, something special, isn't it?
yeah.
Ben might be running proceedings, but John has plenty of wisdom to hand down to his son.
Now, you could produce the odd cushion, just those sorts of little things, but I know they're bloody uncomfortable, those chairs. Now go for it, Ben.
What, meet and greet?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm Ben. I'm the son of...
John.
Yeah, that's right, you know. Sorry, him. They're kind of handing over the meet and greet to me now.
Must just kiss the bride. Hello.
How are
well
you?
Done. Very well.
Those benches are chronically uncomfortable. Would you like a couple of cushions? Because I'm going to go and get a couple. Would that be...
No,
Are you all right?
fine. What about you?
Are you all right on that? OK, OK.
Was it your mum, Mrs. Phillips?
Yes.
I remember her.
Good.
I
Well,
thought she was a lovely lady.
Yes, she had a strong character.
Nothing wrong with that.
In the fullness of time, you've got to find your own style, and it's easier to do that if you haven't got the monkey on your back.
Sometimes one has to just...
You do, bite your tongue.
Bite your tongue, just
you
a
do.
little.
Especially with children.
The odd... Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you get soaked? I think last time it was this end that came off.
When a problem with the water supply threatens to disable the portaloos, Ben's on the case. A proud Aunt Anthea looks on.
Well, it seems that though Benjamin's doing quite a good job, it's an opportunity for him, and he just needs to make a success of something to prove to his parents that he can.
The old man's so tight he won't buy any more.
With the wedding reception in full swing, Ben can at last relax and reflect on his success.
I've really enjoyed it. I was a little bit apprehensive at the beginning. I think, like all of these things, it's down to practice. And if we can get a really smooth machine up and running, there's no reason why we can't lay on a very good show every time.
But despite his promise to take the house off the market, John appears to be going back on his word.
I was accused of procrastinating by Ruth, and to that extent I will perhaps go on procrastinating and keep our options open. Given a really good offer, then one would be mad not to consider it.
With Ben's trial period over, time is running out for Heath House. Can Ruth persuade John Phillips that it's time to finally hand over the reins to his eldest son?
What is the harm in giving it a try?
And has Ben done enough to prove that he is up to the job?
Because they don't think I can wipe my bottom.
Ben Phillips is determined to persuade his parents not to sell their ancestral home and give him the chance to run it as a commercial concern. With the help of Ruth Watson, he's proved he's got what it takes. But Ben's parents are yet to be convinced and are considering a new offer on the estate. In a bid to unite the family, Ruth returns to Heath House for the final time.
I'm not actually expecting to see many material changes at Heath House. It's more about whether Ben has been able to develop the steely resolve necessary to resist his father's plans for this house, namely to sell it.
In her first visit 7 months ago, Ruth suggested the Phillips celebrate their heritage. Ben has started work on collating the wealth of information.
So this is not the same room we were in when I saw the collection with Flavia, is it?
It's not. This was a bedroom. This seemed to be a good idea to convert it into an archive
Right.
bedroom for the time being.
I have to be very honest, Ben, this is pretty much what I saw the first time. It needs to have some more meaning than this. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, I do. And I think if we can pull all of this together, I think it would really help to give the place, you know, a narrative and a uniqueness that the people would take away with.
And how are we doing on this business of offers for the house?
Dad told me that there is one other person, and that if that doesn't materialise, then that we take it off the market and we concentrate on this.
Can you trust him on that?
I lost my temper with him, because we can go on like this forever.
Well, I think the only way that your parents are going to believe in you is for you to actually do something physical, you know, to say, right, I'm here, I'm coming here.
My plan is to move up here in the spring of next year.
Well, I think you need to declare that.
It is a nightmare, parents and children, and you need an intermediary because they don't think I can wipe my bottom.
Impressed with Ben's newfound confidence, Ruth calls the family, including brother Justin, to a meeting to resolve the matter once and for all.
The problem really is that, John, to date, Ben is not really getting the support from you because you keep looking at offers for the house. So, in effect, this actually isn't a problem about how to raise money, because I think that's really quite easy.
I don't entirely agree with you. To date, we have only got 2 bookings for next year. That is all we've got.
But the reason for that is because there's always this caveat about, is the house actually going to be in your ownership? And while that situation pertains, it's never going to go full thrust.
Yes, but I think that if a really good offer did come along, then one should consider it.
But I don't think you can have it both ways. I find it quite baffling that you wouldn't give Ben that opportunity, even if you think he's going to fail, because the jeopardy is so small in comparison with the opportunity. I mean, in the future, Justin, I mean, would you want to come and live here?
It'd be fantastic to see the place, you know, operating as a successful business. Of course it would be. In terms of the immediate plans, I mean, Benjamin is centre stage here.
If we're going to put all our eggs into Benjamin's basket, we do want to feel comfortable that Benjamin has got the necessary training and ability to handle it.
Because you don't trust that he can do it.
No,
My point
that hasn't been said.
Well, I think it's very evident, because otherwise you'd just be saying, get on with it.
We need clarity and focus here, away from the distractions of possible interested buyers, because that just makes me feel crap, to be honest. Because I think, well, am I investing in here or am I not? You know.
Nobody is answering the question that I really want to know. What is the harm in giving it a try?
There is no harm. So no, fine. Let's let Benjamin have a clear run at it.
And I think, you know, Ben, you have got to show the gumption to do this. Could we have agreement that as long as Ben is living here, he gets till the end of 2011 to prove what he can do?
Fine, OK.
Going to hold you to it, John?
With agreement at last within the Phillips family, Ruth leaves them with one final thought.
The only last thing that Ben's got to do, of course, is procreate somehow.
Well, I'm quite glad I haven't got that burden as well as this at the moment. Do you know what I mean?
I think it shows that massive progress has been made, in as much as the Phillips family have now agreed that Ben can have his opportunity of living here, of making a business here, and of trying to make it work. I think he's going to have to show an enormous amount of stamina and robustness to stand up to his father, but at least he's got his chance.
Riverhill House in Kent, a Queen Anne manor built in 1714. The Rogers family have lived here since 1840. To make ends meet, they open the historic gardens to the public, but visitor numbers are dwindling. Over 60 years, Evelyn Rogers has seen the once magnificent treasured estate fall into disrepair.
It has gone through very hard times, this poor old place, really. It's gone down, down, down.
Grandson Ed and his wife Sarah are desperate to save Riverhill for the next generation.
I've begun to feel more overwhelmed by the place. The income coming in isn't getting any greater, so, something's got to give somewhere.
Can businesswoman Ruth Watson secure Riverhill's future and persuade the generations of this distinguished family to agree on the way forward?
You said to me that you were proud of the fact that you kept your mouth closed.
I would never say don't do it, it's up to him.
She can be a little stubborn on certain points.
I just wouldn't like it.
Riverhill House near Sevenoaks in Kent is a Grade 2 listed manor built from local ragstone. Nestled into the hillside in 130 acres of splendid grounds, the listed gardens are of great historic importance, bearing rare trees and plants. For over 160 years, Riverhill has been home to the Rogers family. The current custodians are Ed Rogers and his wife Sarah, a former teacher.
I live here with what I call my three Mrs. Rogers, which is my grandmother, my mother, and Sarah. They're my sort of force on the ground.
4 generations of the family live at Riverhill. Ed and Sarah live with their children in a cottage on the grounds. Ed's mum, Jane, lives in the main house, and Ed's grandmother, Evelyn, resides in the lodge. She's lived at Riverhill since the end of World War II and, at 86, remains the matriarch of the family.
Obviously, I've come to the time of my life when I should be taking a back seat. But you see, we can't manage without each other.
And I think my mother-in-law has given her life to this place. And, well, I suppose in the sort of way I have, really.
Ed was just 21 when he took on the crumbling estate after his father, Johnny, died prematurely of a brain tumour.
That changed the dynamic in that I sort of became more responsible.
It came as quite a shock, really, to suddenly find that you were in the driving seat. Just finished university, and then suddenly you're worrying about blocked drains, leaking roofs. It's a lovely place to live, but it's not easy.
Ed works full-time in the city and struggles to run the 130-acre estate.
Ed's the first Rogers to earn money for nearly 200 years, and it's terribly important, but he works desperately hard. He can't be everywhere at the same moment.
The spring gardens only open to the public on Sundays and bank holidays for just 3 months of the year, bringing in £5,000. But it costs £50,000 to keep the estate going. It's a constant worry for Ed, and selling up isn't an option.
I'd like to certainly give it my best shot before one goes down that route.
Can I just interrupt? That sounds so lame. Can you just give a bit of passion of why you like it? Why do you love it? Why do you really want to be here? You're not going to just give it your best shot, because that means it might fail. You've got to be a bit of determination.
Sarah might be a relative newcomer to the family, but she's ambitious and pragmatic, and realises that if Riverhill is to survive, it needs to change.
The Rogers, they're very bright people, they're very learned people, but they haven't had to be money makers. So we've already got lots and lots of ideas, but the question is which one to pursue.
But Sarah knows that as the latest Mrs. Rogers, she needs to tread carefully.
I think it might lose something of its flavour of a family home if it got too big. It would be nice to get much bigger, but not that big.
In an attempt to turn the fortunes of the family home around, business guru Ruth Watson has been called in to help. Today she's in Kent to meet the Rogers and secure Riverhill House and Gardens for the future.
We're frightened of embarking on some schemes. Ruth may be able to give us the confidence to do them.
Hello, I'm Ed. Welcome to Riverhill.
How do you do? Thank you for the very welcome umbrella. It's awful.
Hello, Ruth.
This is Sarah.
Hello, how do you do?
Do come in.
Gosh, it's wet.
Ruth begins her tour of the house in the grand hall.
Come on in.
Oh, this is marvellous. Look at this ceiling.
On a bit of sort of history of the family, one of our most famous ancestors was John Rogers the Martyr, who was burnt at the stake at Smithfield in 1555.
And who lives here?
My mother lives here.
Your mother lives
Yes,
here, right. And then where do you live?
Just down the track, through just the other side of the farm.
And you have a grandma, I believe, as well?
Yes, my grandmother lives in the lodge.
So can I see some more of the house?
Yes, absolutely.
Of course.
Come through to the drawing room.
Since Ed took over the house in 1995, little has changed at Riverhill.
So this is the drawing room.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes. Drawing room. There's a picture over there of what the house looked like when my family bought it.
For a house in such a prime hillside location, the outlook today is very different.
Can I just say that's the first thing that hits me is there is no view, and yet there should be a view. I mean, what is this awful stuff outside the window?
Well, the yew hedge was allowed to grow up to block the road down there.
I think it's very oppressive looking. I mean, one doesn't look at the garden and think how beautiful at the moment.
In its heyday, Riverhill House would have been a bustling family home with 12 live-in servants, a dairymaid and 8 full-time gardeners. Today, Ed's mother Jane lives in it alone, and it's a very different story.
How much does it matter to you that the house stays in the Rogers family?
Riverhill is very important to me. I don't want to be the generation that sort of gives up on it.
Do you come from a similar family?
Not at all, no. Definitely not.
So-
And my father's a doctor and he's lived in so many different houses.
Yeah.
When I first met Ed, it seemed quite strange, the idea that you would stay in the same house. I've come to realise how lovely it is to have that thought that our children are part of this long line of Rogers. The hairstyle is even traditional now.
Is it?
And unchanged.
Genetic.
It's not genetic.
It looks very 20s, I have to say, very
Yeah.
sort of 20s, 30s, kind of.
Timeless is what I say.
It's timeless. Timeless, okay, all right, okay.
Family values are undoubtedly important to the Rogers, but Ruth wants to find out more. Having met one Mrs. Rogers, she's keen to meet the other two.
This is my mother Jane.
Hello,
Hello,
how do
very
you
nice
do?
to meet you.
And my
good to meet
grandmother.
you. Hello, Mrs. Rogers. Yes. Hello.
Do sit down.
Thank you. What sort of income is derived from the gardens at the moment?
Practically nothing.
The garden barely at the moment makes enough to cover the cost of actually doing it.
Do you just make the decisions, Ed, or are no decisions made?
No decisions really made at the moment, are there?
We usually put sort of 1 foot forward and about 20 back.
Do you have any income, Jane, that you either contribute or are you a tenant here? Do you pay rent? How does it work?
I'm just a sort of housekeeper. No, I'm afraid I just don't have the money to put into it.
Right.
But I do try and look after it. As I suppose really it's been a challenge ever since, you know, I've lived here and with Johnny dying and for Ed to carry on.
Ed's father, Johnny, was just 51 when he died 15 years ago. But it's not the only tragedy to have hit the family.
My uncle, my father's brother, who sadly died about 5 years ago, he was a bachelor and was very fond of the family home. And he very kindly has left some money for the maintenance of the garden, not the house, but the maintenance of the garden.
With some capital set aside for the gardens, they could be utilised to secure the future of the whole estate. The question is, how?
I've got lots of ideas, but I'm not very brave, Ruth.
Give me a couple of ideas that you've had.
Well, I've had an idea of putting a wind farm up at the top of the hill. We've got some wonderful woodland, and I thought of perhaps having some sort of adventure trails for children, but not done
But with space for just 30 cars on site, Evelyn thinks that the family should concentrate on practicalities first.
About it. One of our troubles is our parking is not brilliant here.
We're frightened that if we have more than 30 cars, we can't park them, so we think, oh, well, don't bother doing it.
The family have been here since 1840, and during this whole period of time, all they've had to do was sit around, have a lovely time, collect plants and have their portraits painted. The problem now is it's the 21st century. Whatever happens here is going to be something of a culture shock.
If Riverhill House and its splendid gardens are to survive, radical changes need to be made. But will Ruth be able to spur the Rogers into action?
It took Ed over 10 years to propose to me, so there's no rushing the Rogers.
Riverhill House is the ancestral home of the Rogers family, who have lived here for nearly 2 centuries. But current owners Ed Rogers and his wife Sarah are struggling to keep the crumbling pile and its historic gardens going.
My family created everything around me here, so if I give it all up and hand it on to somebody else, I feel I've given away 160 years of history suddenly in one bosh.
Overlooking the Weald of Kent, Riverhill House is a fine Queen Anne manor, complete with 2 grand reception rooms, antique wood panelling, and ornate ceilings. Keen botanist John Rogers, a contemporary of Charles Darwin, purchased the estate in 1840 because of its sheltered location and lime-free soil. An early member of the Royal Horticultural Society, he was a patron of the intrepid Victorian plant hunters who brought back rare and beautiful specimens from as far afield as the Himalayas. It's thanks to his foresight that Riverhill has such splendid gardens today. But over the decades, the family's fortunes declined. The house and its historic grounds are falling into disrepair. The spring gardens only open for around 20 days a year between March and June, attracting fewer than 1,000 visitors and little income. Ruth Watson's been called in to help turn the estate's fortunes around.
So this is this year's disaster, Ruth, I'm afraid. Our walled garden, the frost got into the brickwork and the sort of freeze-thaw action caused it to just collapse.
So up beyond the planting here, that's still your land?
That's our land, yes.
Through there we have...
Our woodland garden, which was created by my great-grandfather between the 2 wars.
That's where most of the visitors go, is it?
Yes,
when
that's
they
right.
come
Yeah, that's
on that wall?
where the colour is.
Yeah.
Sarah used to be a primary school teacher and thinks the key to Riverhill's success could be creating a more child-friendly environment.
Watch your feet, Ruth.
Yes.
Don't worry, this bit's not open to the public.
So this is what you refer to as the rockery?
That's right. It was created by my great-grandmother.
In its heyday, this was absolutely magnificent. It had little paths and the water gushing down and sort of a fairy's grotto.
Yes, it is, very
I wonder about
grotto-like.
sort of little children's parties and having, maybe Clemmy's have a 3rd birthday party.
I mean,
in
how
the
much
fairy's
would you
grotto.
like the garden to be really approachable by children?
Oh, very much so, yes. I mean, that's the thing, I'm not really a horticulturist, but I see everything in the eyes of children. I think perhaps we want to retain the sort of wildness and lose the areas which are sort of derelict.
Yeah,
What a job for you, Ruth.
Let's pick up this little wild one.
Come on, Clem.
Go on our journey.
Little has altered at Riverhill since the gardens were established, and Sarah can see that the estate's survival depends on change. Ed's grandmother, Evelyn, is less keen and wants to see the garden's tranquility and historical links maintained.
I've put out here a letter from Charles Darwin to the John Rogers of the day. They were both fellows of the Royal Society. The John Rogers who bought Riverhill was incredibly brainy, and I always say to people, if Darwin was writing to him, as you can see in the letter, asking him a question, referring to him, he must have been pretty brainy for Darwin to want to ask him something. Yes.
What really bothers me about all of this is, does anyone other than you and the family know all this?
Not really.
Because, I mean, this is actually really quite worrying, because if you're the only person who has the knowledge of all these things...
I'm very conscious of the winged chariot is getting nearer all the time, you know, and I would love to have more time to write, but one gets so bogged down with just day-to-day living, which is unfortunate, really.
At 86, Evelyn remains head of the family. And Ruth wants to ensure that this won't prove an obstacle to any potential plans at Riverhill.
How much do you think you're still the matriarchal figure here, and that everyone is going to do what you want them to do?
Oh, I don't say what I want anymore.
So you're very happy for Ed to have free rein, as it were?
Well, he must. Whether I'm happy or not is another thing, but he must. When you hand it over, it's rather like when you first send your child away to school. Is it going to be looked after with loving care? Is it going to be understood? Because I do think these houses have got a soul in a way.
When the gardens are open to the public, Ed's mum, Jane, is in charge of catering.
So that's your responsibility, opening that door every time.
It is, because there's no one else who can open it.
And do you have to man this tea room all the time?
We don't make enough money,
Right.
you know, to pay someone to come here, really.
Yeah.
Like Evelyn and Sarah, Jane also married into the Rogers family, and Ruth's keen to find out more about how she fits in.
Being in the middle of the generations with your mother-in-law still having a voice, I mean, does that make you feel that you can't do things?
She does actually say what she likes or doesn't like.
Yes, I got that impression.
You know, but I feel that Ed and Sarah are sort of young enough. They're together. They've got more go, I think.
And you think the house will be all right with Ed as the owner?
I hope so. I really hope so.
Being the newest Mrs. Rogers is something of a challenge for Sarah.
How do you feel about being the third Mrs. Rogers? I mean, of the ones I've met, of course.
Slightly daunted, I think. The main thing is not to try and copy, but to try and do one's own thing. You know, it took Ed over 10 years to propose to me, so there's no rushing the Rogers.
Yeah. What prompted it in the end?
Well, I just stamped my foot a bit, I suppose.
Said, would you propose?
I said, you know, it's now or never. So Ed likes to be quite sure. I'd rush headlong into a scheme and get my fingers burnt, but somehow I think perhaps a bit of a mixture of the two would be...
I think you're probably right.
I'm hoping will be good.
Yeah.
So I hope that was...
With 3 Mrs. Rogers living on site, Ruth's got her work cut out if she's going to convince them all that change is inevitable. As the Garden of England, Kent is rich in profitable tourist attractions. Today, Ruth's on her way to one such popular destination, Heath Castle, once home to the ill-fated Boleyn family. Like Riverhill, Heath also has stunning spring gardens, yet attracts visitors all year round. Ruth wants to know from the castle's chief executive, Duncan Leslie, how they've become so successful.
So what kind of visitor numbers do you get annually?
We had just under $250,000 last year.
That's a lot. And how much are they paying per head?
£12 for adults, $6.50 for children.
Yes.
And if it's just the grounds, an adult will be paying about £9.
Right. So how do you keep visitor numbers up here? Because this essentially is a spring garden, isn't it?
Spring colours are very good, but we produce colour in the summer as well. And we're wanting people to come here as many times as possible, not just come here once. And if they come in the spring, they'll see something very different from having come in the autumn and vice versa the summer. We constantly evolve. I liaise a lot with the head gardener, as do the owners. You know, they have an interest in the garden. You've got to keep interest going, and I think, you know, visitors thoroughly enjoy seeing something new, something different.
With this in mind, Ruth's next port of call is Leeds Castle. Set in 500 acres of glorious parkland, one popular tourist attraction is the world-famous maze, constructed using 2,400 yew trees.
I'm trying to find Adrian Fisher, who's the world's leading maze designer. And he's done too good a job here because I can't find the centre and I've been walking for ages. Adrian!
Hello?
I can't find you!
Oh, you'll have to go back the other way, actually.
The other way, right. So, Adrian, you're the creator of this evil maze. You've done a lot of projects.
It's about 500 mazes all around the world.
Now, if you say a maze is actually a puzzle, can we create a puzzle without it being such a formal maze in a woodland garden?
It could well be, yes. The whole landscape could be one enormous puzzle. The experience can be actually quite different, visit by visit.
The maze is clearly a memorable experience for the thousands of tourists who visit Leeds Castle. An attraction such as this could prove a money spinner for Riverhill.
There are 3 generations of Rogers, in fact 4 at Riverhill, if you include the tiny tots. I think it'd be marvellous if you could come and meet them.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Having done her research, Ruth's come up with a plan of action for the Rogers. She's back at Riverhill to deliver her findings, convinced that the answer lies within the historical grounds.
Good morning, Mrs. Rogers, Mrs. Rogers, Mrs. Rogers, and Ed.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is all about the garden. The whole problem with this garden is it has such a short season. It has very few visitors. Your advertising actually speaks more about when you're not open than when you are open. And I think that's all got to be completely changed. The first thing that needs to happen is a car park. I think you should engage the services of 2 or 3 car park contractors who understand about how to do this, and I think that project needs to be begun sooner rather than later.
Ruth also wants to ensure that Riverhill's remarkable history is documented for future generations.
One of the most important things, Mrs. Rogers Senior, is the fount of all knowledge here, and you know this. Whether it's the plants, whether it's the history of the family, all these things are incredibly precious, both to you as a family, but also to our heritage. And I think you should set aside perhaps an hour every weekend and just record you speaking about everything you know.
Yes, I know if I went under a bus, there's so much in my head that will just go forever.
Ruth believes that the historic grounds can increase revenue enough to support the entire estate. But to do so, the Rogers will have to raise their game.
I think you need to be thinking much bigger than you are at the moment. At the end of the day, visitor numbers have to be increased. You have to have the car park. You have to have attractions linking from the Darwin, the history of the garden, through the garden itself and the plants.
What Ruth wants to see at Riverhill is a major children's attraction that will lure visitors and revenue through the gates. She wants the Rogers to research the concept.
My trump card is a chap called Adrian Fisher. He is the world's leading designer of mazes. He works absolutely with the owners of the site to create things that are specifically good for here. He can do things that are trails, he can do adventure walks, he can do exploratory things, he can tie in with Darwin. It's all about puzzles in gardens which attract both adults and children.
And Ruth thinks the Rogers are missing a trick when it comes to plant regeneration.
Where you need to replant, I think you should be setting up an adopt a plant kind of notion.
What the garden side.
You can actually get people to sponsor that plant. I think it makes them part and parcel of Riverhill.
I think it would take away the family atmosphere of the garden. There are various things here planted in memory of members of the family.
Yeah.
And I think to have complete strangers commemorated in the garden would, to me, not be the same thing. I don't know what you feel.
Well, you said to me that you were proud of the fact that you kept your mouth closed. So I think this is a moment where you really have got to search your soul and say, will I willingly let Ed take on full responsibility?
I couldn't stop saying a thing like I said about other people's memorial plants. But it's up to him. I would never say don't do it. It's up to him.
Right.
But I just wouldn't like it.
OK. It's now time for Ed to step up to the mark and be the man. Now, there's one last thing I would like you to do before I come back. And I think it would be symbolic of change, and that is to cut down the yew hedge. And I think that should be your private little act of commitment to going forward.
Yeah, good.
Ruth's findings have given the family plenty to think about.
Obviously, it's hurtful to be told it's all in such a sort of state of shambles, which it is. I mean, I know it is, you see.
Sarah, being new blood on the block sort of thing, has some, perhaps some out-of-the-box ideas. Equally, at the other end of the spectrum, we've got my grandmother who's been here 60 years, and I think her goal would be that this remains a family home.
I mean it with no disrespect to my grandmother-in-law, who is a wealth of knowledge, but she can also be a little stubborn on certain points.
I've no idea what Ed will do, but myself, I'd have reservations on putting too much into it. But I know we've got to put something into it, but I just think it's a little bit frightening.
6 weeks after Ruth's visit, and the Rogers are already getting down to business. They've got a team of tree surgeons in to tackle the overgrown yew hedge. And Sarah's wasted no time at all in calling in maze expert Adrian Fisher for advice.
What I'd really like to do is stand back as far as we can, and you show me what excites you.
Let's go and explore.
Let's
I
do
want
that.
to show you.
Absolutely.
Before Ed and Sarah can decide where to site the maze, there's a wealth of planning to consider.
One thing that excites me about this is the sort of place where you could kind of put a magnet in the landscape.
Right.
And you could draw people through the exciting, intimate gardens one way,
Yeah.
and then encourage them to go back another way.
Right, okay.
Thus, they can't help it, but because they're coming to some sort of magnet here,
Yes, yeah.
before you know it, they've actually enjoyed an awful lot of the gardens without even realising they've been exploring them.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this is our view we've got here from the top of the hill, one of the highest points in Kent other than the Downs.
It's such a fantastic view. It'd be crazy not to include it in the...
I think we've got to get people up here. People love coming to the top of the hills, don't they?
It's not just a garden, it's not even a garden lover's garden. It's actually it's one of the family homes of national importance in the gardening world.
Riverhill is on the brink of its biggest transformation in over a century. But Ed's grandmother has her doubts.
I fear for them, that's all. I just don't want them to get themselves into a real tangle.
And Sarah's confidence is challenged by the sheer scale of the undertaking.
I was feeling quite optimistic, but I'm feeling a little worried about it all now.
Ruth Watson is on a mission to rescue Riverhill House and its historic gardens from dereliction. In a bid to increase their revenue, Ed and Sarah Rogers are planning the first major commercial operation in the estate's history by launching an ambitious children's woodland experience. Ed's grandmother Evelyn is following Ruth's advice and recording the family's history for posterity, with a bit of help from granddaughter-in-law Sarah.
And I thought perhaps we could talk about the trees.
Yes.
And then perhaps go up into the wood garden.
I think so, because I think with these three trees...
Well, hold on a minute. Let me just start off the camera a minute. OK. Right. It's far away.
Talk about the three trees there, because they are so wonderful, and it was so incredibly lucky with the storm that they survived.
Right.
But what is interesting from the family point of view is the turkey oak, which is the big spreading tree.
Right, let me just get a shot of that. Hold on. Yep, the turkey oak, yep.
Because that came back as an acorn in the pocket of Ed's great-grandfather after he'd been fighting in the Crimea.
Ed and Sarah have grand designs for Riverhill, and Ed's already started clearing the site. But Evelyn is anxious that with the ambitious new plans, the Riverhill she knows and loves isn't spoiled.
What a lot of the public say is what they love is that it is a family home and it isn't too commercial. And I don't want the atmosphere of the place to go by being absolutely overrun with people. So I think you've just got to be jolly careful to keep the balance of that.
Aware that Riverhill's survival depends on change, Ed is also mindful of his grandmother's concerns.
I think my grandmother has very much felt, this has been her home for 60 years or so, and the garden opening has been very much her thing. So I think that is quite a transition for her, changing possibly the scale of it, which is what we ultimately need to do. And I think that that's possibly something that daunts her a little bit.
But it's not only Evelyn who's overwhelmed by the speed of change.
Bit daunted myself, I have to say. Well, I was feeling quite optimistic, but I'm feeling a little worried about it all now.
Hi Simon, Sarah Rogers here.
As a former teacher, Sarah's convinced that the future of Riverhill is all about attracting children and their families to the estate.
Thanks ever so much for the designs you sent through. So we wondered whether it could be slightly more Himalayan looking. So I just wanted to really chat things through with you.
The gardens are famous for the rare specimens brought back from Nepal, China and the Himalayas in the 1800s. And Sarah's keen to embrace this.
I did this map and I did these sort of symbols like this. And Ed pointed out that you can't have that because that means fir trees, and he's very pedantic and apparently it's a chestnut wood, and so I've got to change it. God knows what the symbol for chestnuts is.
It's the end of the summer, and Ruth's back in Kent to see how the Rogers plans are progressing. Riverhill only has space to park 30 cars. If it's to be a success in the future, the estate needs to invest in its infrastructure. Ruth wants to know if Ed's done his homework.
Well, this is going to be our new car park next year, hopefully.
And why have you decided on this side?
We've analysed all sort of access points on the estate, and this probably is still the most optimum.
It's very good in the sense of orientation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because people know exactly where they should be heading for, and presumably wherever somebody's going to be taking the money will be somewhere.
Absolutely, yeah, in that direction.
So, yes, yeah.
On her last visit, the panoramic view from Riverhill House was obscured by overgrown yew trees. She's keen to find out if the Rogers have followed her advice and chopped them down.
Hello, Sarah.
Ruth, lovely to see you.
And to see you too. It's beautiful.
It's wonderful, isn't it? I know. There you head.
It's absolutely extraordinary.
It's made quite a difference. The lovely view of our own fields.
We couldn't see any of the fields at all. I mean, it's just...
And the beautiful tree, the oak tree and everything. I mean, it just looks so much better. Well done. So, Sarah, you've been doing things, so can we sit down and have a chat?
But the biggest change of all at Riverhill for generations will be the ambitious Children's Adventure Park.
What we're proposing is that we have a Himalayan theme.
What could be more appropriate?
But we want it to be reflecting the history of the Rogers family, but also make it a really exciting place for families to explore together. So these are just suggestions, really, of ideas which we might take to rebrand ourselves.
Yes, and I think calling it Himalayan Gardens because there is nowhere like that.
No.
I mean, you are creating a unique brand.
Perhaps if I can show you the map, the car park you've seen, people come from the car park to the area in front of the tea room.
Yeah, that is the sort of retail trading area
I wondered whether we could call that base camp.
Yes, brilliant idea.
And then they go up this hillside path, possibly with a Sherpa pack for your children.
Yes.
Up to this area here, which is where we'd like a play area.
So that's the Himalayan hideout.
We have asked Adrian Fisher to create one of his wonderful mazes for us.
I don't think I've ever been as impressed by anybody's thought and imagination on a project as this. I really am. I think it's wonderful.
It does mean a lot to me, and I know it will to
I
Ed.
think it's brilliant. I think it's just marvellous.
We thought a lot about it,
well done.
we hope it takes off. We've got confidence now.
Yes.
You've given us confidence, so.
Since Ruth was last at Riverhill, Ed's grandmother, Evelyn, has been ill. Ruth wants to make sure that with so many changes afoot, she's aware of the bold scheme.
I'm mightily impressed with the plans for the garden. Have you had an opportunity to look and hear about what they're proposing to do?
Not very much, just a little bit, but I'm thrilled to hear about opening up to the woodland and that sort of thing.
Does this imply you've been taking a back seat?
Well, I haven't been in hospital and being at home. It's the first time I've come out for 5 weeks, you see, so obviously I've taken a back seat. But anyway, it's their due, you know.
Yes, yeah. The notion of calling the tea room base camp because, again, of echoing the Himalayas, does that fill you with horror?
Well, I mean, it's only Himalayan in the springtime. I mean, I'm all for it being open in the springtime. If it's going to be open in the middle of the summer, people won't know what you're talking about. It is essentially an English country house.
Your knowledge of the house and the history of it, we talked about Sarah coming and recording.
Yes, well, she started with the garden. And up in the woodland a bit too.
And did you enjoy doing it?
Oh, yes, I love talking. I talk. Love the sound of my own voice, yes. No.
We all do.
Yes, and I think that's one thing that I really am grateful to you for. You gave the spur that was necessary to get on with that.
Good.
The maze absolutely boggles me. I mean, I cannot see the point of the maze.
I mean, it is a proven model. You know, it's not something where you're just taking a straw and saying, well, this
foreign
works.
to this place.
But I think we do get back, Mrs. Rogers, if I may be so bold as to say, is that I think you do have to let them get on with it.
It's their thing, and, you know, I've got to stand back. But I fear for them, that's all. I just don't want them to get themselves into a real tangle.
Just that first bit there, Ruth.
Sarah's keen to show Ruth the progress they've already made in preparation for the brand new new
So,
Riverhill
well,
experience.
what we should just take off the top level there. But this, Ruth, was totally impassable.
And this is all Ed's work?
Well, yes, Ed, his brother, and some friends kindly come along to help. The first friends of Riverhill, I think.
Aerial walkways, climbing frames and tree houses are all part of the master plan. Ed's finalising the proposals with specialist playground designer Lyndon Davis.
Yeah.
Oh, hi!
This is Lyndon from
Hello,
Plain and Simple.
how do you do? Hi.
We were just discussing the plans here for the Himalayan hideout.
And these two big trees, they're here?
That's what, yes, Lyndon's been working on them. They are, Ed, what are they?
Sweet chestnut.
I mean, this is, again, confirmation that John Rogers did some fantastically beautiful things because they are such fine and glorious trees. And here they are. I mean, when did anyone last get to see these, Sarah?
I shouldn't think anyone has stood on this spot where we're standing now for 50, 80 years?
50, 80 years, enjoying it anyway. Certainly these are lovely cedar trees here as well, which were planted, some of the original plantings in 1840, so it's good that people can enjoy them from this side as well as from the south side.
Now, this looks really good fun. Very good fun.
Really enjoy doing it. We really enjoy unusual ones.
Yes, yeah, no.
It's not the first plan, is it, Linda?
I bet it isn't.
But Sarah and Ed are saving the best till last. The scene from their very own Mount Everest summit.
This is our proposed viewpoint here.
I mean, this is just staggering.
Is it worth the climb?
Just. I mean, look, but, it is worth the climb. And this, I would say, is arguably the best view in Kent. And the maze is going to be here on
just
this
over
field
there,
in
so
front.
you can
Absolutely,
look
where that
over.
flat area is.
Ruth's clearly impressed with what the Rogers have achieved, but she wants to see Ed and Sarah put their plans to the test.
I think Riverhill's going to become a very special place for people to want to come and visit. And I'm charging you with, on my next visit, to see some kids actually trying some of this out. And I think to see their little faces and have their Sherpa packs and use them for feedback and research.
Yeah, get some children here and organise a day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
That'd
think
be very
that'd be
exciting.
fun. This is all about the younger generation, Ed and Sarah taking up the baton and really running with it. I'm so impressed with what they've achieved so far. They've been so thoughtful about things. They've shown great commercial acumen. They are absolutely rigorously testing every thought and idea. I just think that they're doing absolutely the right thing.
Three weeks later, and it's the day of the Riverhill trial. All the generations of Rogers are pulling together, hoping to make it a success. To tie in with the theme, Sarah's planned a surprise Himalayan guest, somewhat at Ed's expense.
Look.
Children are going to be absolutely terrified.
I think it's a health and safety thing that you can't do this very long, isn't there?
You might be a little worried about your hair. Where will you keep your comb?
Well, the thing is, my product does say that it just stays firm underneath helmets, so maybe it will under a Yeti hat.
With 2 hours to go, Ruth Watson arrives to oversee proceedings.
Hello, morning.
Good morning.
Nice day.
It's beautiful.
Isn't it? Hello.
Oh, hello, Ruth.
Hello.
Hi,
Hive of activity. It's all looking very good
Nice
out
to
there.
see you.
With lots of backpacks being assembled.
Oh, yes, well, luckily we've got some nice people to help this morning.
Fantastic. And all these cakes.
Yes, we've got a sample menu.
So Jane's putting on her... Are you putting on an apron, Jane?
I'm not sure. I haven't decided.
I've got a notepad.
I like the fact that you're telling people what you're doing and what you're about. That's such a good idea. Everybody is always then up for going with the flow of it.
30 eager local schoolchildren have been drafted in to trial the Rogers Himalayan experience. The event begins with an introduction from a very proud Ed.
Welcome, boys and girls, to the Riverhill Himalayan Garden. We're so excited that you can join us here today. And Riverhill was bought in 1840 by my great-great-great-grandfather. He wanted the best plants, so he paid for people to go off and explore the Himalayas in South America, and they risked their lives for him and sent back seeds. And what we're going to do today is show you some of our special shrubs and trees here that have grown from those seeds that were sent back. And maybe there has been a sighting of a strange beast in the woods here, so we do have to be very careful.
The children are led up into the wooded garden by Sarah to see some of Riverhill's rarest specimens.
Now what we've got to do is we've got to spot a special rhododendron with different... No, these are just normal leaves.
They find themselves transported back in time to the Himalayas of the 1800s.
Can anybody spot this rhododendron with very special leaves? What's that rhododendron's name? Well done, Fulcaneri. So, looking around today, we've got all sorts of trees and...
To help out, Sarah's called on a valiant Victorian plant hunter called George.
Can you believe that one tiny, tiny, tiny little seed can grow up to be a tree 100, 200 feet tall, and all from one tiny little seed? Now, I'm going to need a little bit of help from you now, because I've got a lot more plants to gather.
Children, would you like to help George?
Yeah. Now, what's that?
He sounds like a yeti. I suppose he might have. He seems to have had a terrible time.
Sarah's so in her own métier here. You know, she is a teacher and she loves the kids and she's really going with it. She's really in character now, so I think it is all great stuff, and I love the little pony too.
Look on this one, there's some quite big ones.
A purple one. Spiky.
Oh, I like that one.
The children help intrepid George gather interesting seeds. But is there something sinister lurking in the woods at Riverhill House? The historic gardens at Riverhill House in Kent are in the process of a major regeneration with the help of Ruth Watson. In a bid to increase revenue and save the historical house from dereliction, Ed and Sarah Rogers are transforming their estate into a Himalayan experience for children. They've invited 30 youngsters to put it to the test, but their mission is fraught with danger.
On the way, we're going to be looking out for something. There's been sightings of something strange in the woods.
Yeti?
I'm not sure, because no one in the world has ever caught a yeti.
As the children set off on their adventure, Ruth stays behind with the parents at base camp to help Jane out in the tea room.
What sort of cake would you like?
Carrot cake.
Carrot cake.
This is where they've gone now. They've gone up to the top. This is what we're hoping to have built. Right. So we're going to have a new car park too.
In those enormous trees there, that's where we're going to hope to build the tree houses. Look how tall they are. Anyone know what type of tree that is? Yes?
Horse chestnut.
Well done, a horse chestnut. You're brilliant in your trees, aren't you? Would you like to go and see if you can find that yeti?
Yes!
Careful though, Kathy, he doesn't attack.
The Yeti makes a lucky escape, and the children make it safely to the summit.
Hoist the flag! Hoist the flag! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! And one for luck! Hip hip! Hooray!
Funny, it looks like we can actually see our skull from here. We are. My favourite bit was probably climbing up the mini Mount Everest, 200 feet, because it made me feel like I really want to climb the proper Everest. Well, my favourite bit was getting closest to the Yeti and running after the Yeti, trying to catch him. A bit of history and some nature and a bit of science too, instead of our usual schoolwork. I haven't been here before, but I like it. I might come here again.
The experience is clearly a hit with the youngsters, and the parents are impressed too.
Are you local? Do you live nearby?
I live about 10 minutes away.
And did you know Riverhill existed?
I never had a clue. Everything, the house, the gardens, it's just been absolutely beautiful.
Yes. There's not anywhere really around here that's like this, for them to just run around and run up the stream and have a real explore.
So you'll come back when it's a proper going concern?
Definitely.
I like the idea that everything they're doing is natural.
Yes.
So there's no
plastic
things going in. Yeah, I like that.
The trial has proved a huge success. All that remains is for Ruth to bring the family together.
What a successful afternoon. I have to commend you for doing such a brilliant job. I mean, all the preparation, the satchels, the tea, the cakes, everything about it. Just wonderful.
Well, we're thrilled it's gone so well.
Yeah, very relieved, very relieved.
So do you now feel confident that this can work?
Yeah, I still have great reservations about the maze because I can't see the point of it, but the climbing frame and the walk I think is wonderful.
Now, what about Jane, your husband, Ed, your father? Do you think he would approve of all of this?
Yeah. He's probably looking down at us saying, good heavens. But, you know...
But pleased?
Oh, pleased, yes, because, you know, he loved Riverhill, absolutely loved it. Also, actually, Johnny and I probably would not have been brave enough, and I'm probably not so powerful as my daughter-in-law.
Oh, I'm terrified of her as well.
I just hope that your generation, Sarah and Ed, is going to have a wow of a time, and that, you know, you will be able to leave something to your children for them to look forward to rather than to slightly dread. And most importantly, knowing that the house and the gardens are stabilised, they're going to carry on for future generations.
Well, that's what I would like.
Yes, that would be wonderful. I think we all hope that.
Yes.
My work here is done.